Hey guys, happy fall break. You know, I've really enjoyed recording the first 3 episodes of For the Boys. For those episodes, I kind of had certain things that I wanted to explain to you that I had out that was pretty easy for me to find. Today, I don't have anything planned. So I thought it might be kind of fun to go into the extra closet here in the 2nd bedroom in our apartment where I have some genealogy stuff. Most of it's still in storage, but I have a couple of bins in there, you know, the big plastic bins of genealogy stuff. My plan is to go through it to make some decisions about things, to see if I can record things for the Boys. But today, I don't know. So I think it's going to be a surprise. We're going to go through and see if there's something that is interesting that I can record for you fairly quickly, because that's what we do. So let's go into this extra closet and see what we can find. Our extra bedroom has some nice storage space. In this closet right here, we've got tons of different kinds of things. We've got some extra coats, we've got some linens, looks like some sweatshirts, hats. Down here, we've got some supplies that I use for Jumpstart Genealogy, but right here is some genealogy stuff right here. So I want to get into those tubs, and first of all I need to take the Murphy bag off the top here. This is filled with hats and gloves and things that we're going to need here pretty quick in North Carolina, but I'm just going to set that aside and go back to this red tub. I'm really not sure what's in it. At one point in time I had all of my genealogy tubs like this, categorized, I guess. Cataloged is probably the word I'm looking for. On the computer and a spreadsheet and stuff like that. But it's gotten a little bit messed up, so I don't really have that so much. Let's take this out and see what we've got. It looks like we've got some pictures, maybe a postcard album here. Let's see what's in this box right here with the green lid. See if there's anything. Okay, it looks like there's kind of a bag of things that might have belonged to my grandfather, your great-grandfather, Harold Cook. Let's put that aside for a second. We've got an old passport that I think I know who this belonged to. Yes, it belonged to Elizabeth Connell, who was grandmother Gertrude Cook's, my grandmother Gertrude Cook's sister. She has an interesting story. And then we have some religious artifacts in here, probably belonging to the Connell family because they were pretty religious. But let me just take what we found first, this bag of things, and let's take it out to the sunroom table and we'll discover together what's in here. Well, it is an absolutely gorgeous day here. We're on fall break, so no school today. So it's pretty quiet here in the apartment. Gary's at work, but I do have a companion with me. So if you hear anything in the background, we do have a brand new puppy, and his name is Jack. He's 4 months old. We believe that he is a Plott hound. I will go ahead and drop a picture in right now so that you can see the newest member of the Murphy family. But guys, I absolutely love this picture. I can't really remember when it was taken, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. We're still in the Smuggler's Cove house, the typical place where we would take family pictures. It just turns out so well. Probably summertime, but it could have easily have been Thanksgiving or Christmas. I'll have to look at the date on it. But I just love it. I think everybody looks happy and just everybody's smiling. I just love the picture. So I'll treasure that one. But right now we're going to take a look at this bag of goodies. I know it belongs to my grandfather, Harold Cook, because there's a pin in here that says Harold Cook Perfect Circle. And I'll try to explain that a little bit. But I am going to just lay these things out here. And then when I start talking about them individually, I will bring the camera a little bit closer. Okay. All right, so in this, I know you can't really see it because of the back of this chair, but in this bag, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 items that I can either talk about specifically off the top of my head, or maybe I'll do a little bit of research first and be able to talk to you about that then. So give me a second and I'll be right back. What we seem to have here is kind of a strange assortment of the personal effects of Harold Cook. Harold Cook is my grandfather, is Grandma Betsy's father, so your great-grandfather. And I'm not exactly sure how I came into possession of this bag of goodies here, but you know, they seem to be some of his personal effects. Certainly they're not the only personal effects, but there's some really interesting things in here. So I'm going to kind of go through them one by one. Some of them have a story that I can tell right away. Some of them I might have to do a little bit of research on, but I just think that it's unusual that these things were kind of put together. I kind of wonder where they were and why they were put together in this particular grouping. But at the same time, I have so many great memories of my Grandpa Cook. Just off the top of my head, what I know about him is that his name is Harold Staats Cook, S-T-A-A-T-S, and that was the maiden name of his mother, Eva May Staats, or actually her given name is Geneva, but she went by Eva May Staats. He's the only child of Eva and his father, Howard Lee Cook. Now, Howard Lee Cook is the one who died in the car train accident in 1920, on July 4th, 1920, when Grandpa Cook was only just 16 years old. He was born on Christmas Day in 1903 in Greens Fork, was just a little bit outside Hagerstown, where he lived for most of his adult life, at least, and that's where Grandma Betsy and her brother John were born. And you know, he was a hardworking man. He married Grandma Gertrude Connell, who your great-grandmother, when he was in his 30s. I think they were both in his 30s, so they were a little bit later in life. And he loved horses. And so when we talked to Grandma Cook, when we talked to your Grandma Betsy about her father, which we will hopefully over the holidays, she'll talk to you about horses and about his love of horses, and especially the pacers, the ones with the little buggies on them. But that's just a little bit. We'll get into the family tree here in a minute, but I do want to go through these artifacts and tell you as much as I know about them. The first article I'm going to pick up is this book. It's Cook Family History. Now, of course, that caught my eye right away. So it's a small pamphlet that talks about the history of the Cook family in the United States. So it goes back to a Major General George Cook, or Captain James Cook, or Dugald Cook. It appears that this was a gift to my grandfather Harold from my Uncle John and his family. Looks like on Christmas, which also serves as Harold's birthday in 1971. There's the Battle Hymn of the Cooks. So just some background information, which actually is going to come in very handy for me. I'm not sure how much Grandpa Cook was involved in genealogy. I know quite a bit about his family because they were Quakers, but I don't know. I would like to think that he enjoyed this present from John and Jackie and Kent and Matt. But this is just a gift that I'm just not quite sure where it goes from here. I'm sure I'll use it. The next artifact is this little book of New Testament. On the inside, it says to Harold Cook from Lona Fagan. I don't know who Lona Fagan is, but this was a gift to Harold on December 25th, again, his birthday and Christmas, in 1916. So that would have been for his 13th birthday. Grandpa Cook was not a very religious man, at least from my memory. He would drive us to church, and by us, I mean Grandma, or Gertrude Cook, Mom, Eric, and myself. So Grandpa would drive us to Mass on Sundays when we were visiting at St. Elizabeth's in Cambridge City, but he would stay in the car. I do know from the marriage certificate that they did not have a Catholic wedding. I don't really think he practiced anything. Again, his family was Quaker, and I just don't know if he really was brought up with the Quaker faith at all. The next two items are these two watches. I do remember Grandpa always wearing a watch. I don't know anything about watches, but I just think it's pretty cool that these two watches were on his wrist at some point or another. So those are nice things to have. The next two are knives. I know nothing about knives, and I don't remember Grandpa ever carrying a knife, but most likely it was in his pocket if he did carry it. This bluish one has some sort of marking on it, but I can't read it at all. And obviously it's not very big. It doesn't have very many blades in it. I'm having a hard time getting it open. This brown one though, with kind of the faux wood finish, it does say bluegrass on it. It appears to be a little bit bigger blade. It's got some rust on it. But again, I know nothing about knives. I know nothing about, you know, if Grandpa used them, kept them in his pocket. I just don't know. Coming down to some of the last things here is Grandpa's wallet. Now, it does have some things in it, which I think is pretty interesting. So this must have been a wallet that he used up until his dying days in 1992. I think 1992, when he died. No, it was 1982. Some pictures, a personal identification card that had his address and his phone number, his social security number, his religious, it does say Protestant, interesting. So we were just talking about religion. I didn't know what he affiliated with. Here, obviously, he affiliates being Protestant. He had O blood type, and in case of emergency, it does say to call my uncle, who at that point in time was living in Indianapolis. If we go through here, there are pictures of myself and my cousins. There's Kent, Matt, Eric, and myself. Not a great picture. It was the 70s. And here's a picture of my Uncle John and of my mom. There's also a spare key in it, which I have no idea. I have no idea what that key is for. It says motor car, so it must have been his car key at some point in time. But more interesting than anything else, I think, is my grandfather's last driver's license. He looks really old in this picture. It was issued in 1980. So he was almost 77 in this picture. He also has the Perfect Circle Company identification card. We're going to talk about Perfect Circle here in a second and what that was. Medical emergency card, again, his information, and to call my Uncle John Cook in case of emergency. No medical problems, no medicines taken regularly, no dangerous allergies, no contact lenses. We also have his Social Security card, issued on December 1st of 1936, Harold Statz Cook. On the back it says the Perfect Circle Company, Harold Statz Cook, Wayne Trust Apartments, Cambridge City, Indiana. Huh. I wonder if that's where he lived when he first got a job at Perfect Circle. That's interesting. There's a story behind this that I would like to figure out. And then for some unknown reason, we have my grandmother's last driver's license. There's Gertrude A. Cook, and this was, looks like it was issued in 1982. So she was born in 05, so that means that she's almost, what, 77 again when this was issued. So those are the things in his wallet, which I think is kind of interesting. No money or anything like that. And finally, we've got two things here, and we could go with that card in there too. That this one has a picture of my grandfather. It says perfect circle around the outside, a picture, so it's probably some sort of identification picture, and the number 6174, have no idea what that means. But this is probably something that he had to wear at work. And then he has this name pin, Harold Cook Perfect Circle. So I think these two things, along with this card in here, are something that I'm probably going to have to do a little bit more research on, because Perfect Circle, I know, played a very important role in Hagerstown, Indiana, and in the life of my family. We've already seen that Harold Cook worked at the Perfect Circle Company in Hagerstown, Indiana. Now, what Perfect Circle actually manufactured, or what my grandfather actually did at the company, I'm not exactly sure. I can absolutely do some research on the Perfect Circle Company on WayneNet here, which is a great website for Wayne County, Indiana. And I think I'll have to ask my mom what my grandfather did the next time that I see her. So we'll try to fill in more of the story. But this is a great history of the Perfect Circle Company. When I would visit Hagerstown, my mom grew up on Madison Street. I think it was 160 Madison Street. And Perfect Circle Company was just 2 streets down, definitely within walking distance. It was a huge manufacturing place. But I didn't realize what the history was, and I'll try to condense this. It says in 1894, Charles Teeter worked in a bicycle shop in Newcastle, which is just really the next town over from Hagerstown. And one of his family members, I believe it was a cousin of his mother's, worked on the railroad and was looking for a way to help railroad inspectors do their job more quickly. The way it had been done is the inspectors had to walk the rails by foot. And so he wanted this Charles Teeter to try to come up with some sort of bicycle type vehicle that could ride the rails so that the inspectors could ride the rails instead of walk the rails, and then obviously do their job much faster. Teeter is a big name in the area. There's lots of Teeter families. I think they were pretty influential in industry and just in the development of the area, and especially Hagerstown, Indiana, specifically. But what happened once he started making these bicycle carts, if you will, then the automobile industry started here pretty quickly. So that was, turn of the century. Many years of doing the bicycle carts. Then he's wanted to put an engine on them and have them go even faster on the rails. Obviously, that's a precursor to car manufacturing. And as they developed into cars and car parts, they really started to specialize in piston rings. Again, I'm not mechanical. I don't exactly know what piston rings do, but I know that they're an important component of an engine. They got so great at it. They really were the kind of the world renowned for manufacturing piston rings. One of the stories that Mom tells is that the Perfect Circle piston rings were in one of the Indianapolis 500 race winners. And so they got lots of, kudos and congratulations for that. Another story that they tell, or that Mom tells, is that Perfect Circle also invented the cruise control. So obviously as cars developed and got safer and more sophisticated, things like cruise control became very important as well. By, what year does it say? By 1963, down here, Perfect Circle Corporation with more than 2,900 employees. You can imagine this small town. I don't know how many people are in Hagerstown right now. I'll try to find that out. But that's a huge number of people that were employed by this company. And that included your great-grandfather, Harold Cook. So Perfect Circle really was an important part of not only my family's life, your family's life, your great-grandfather, but also really impacted the living conditions of Grandma Betsy, what they were able to afford. They were not a farmer. They were not into other kinds of occupations, kind of hardworking occupations. That's not the right word, but
Harold Cook really was, kind of a white collar guy, and Grandma Cook was a teacher. And so that really did change the trajectory of the family tree, because you got to remember, Grandpa Cook's parents, they were farmers. And so it was Harold Cook who really changed that means of livelihood. So he and Gertrude were kind of a power couple. They were working in teaching and working in manufacturing management, and that really did set up the next generations of the family. Looking at the online family tree has become a fixture for the boys, and I think it's important that we go through what I have online, what I've already been able to curate online, and then what I continue to develop. So Harold Cook, of course, is my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. So we've got Liam here in the home position, and here's me, and here is Grandma Betsy Cook. And here is Harold Stats Cook. Now, I've been able to tell you a little bit about some vital records of his, but we can see some of the documents. There are a couple of things that I would really like to point out to you. But again, here up front, we've got birth of December 25th, 1903 in Greens Fork, Wayne, Indiana. His death was on March 2nd, 1982 in Richmond. He was in the hospital there, and Richmond is the county seat. It's the kind of the largest town or city in Wayne County. He was the only child of Howard Lee Cook and Geneva May Stats. She went by Eva. Just a little story that I want to say is that there is a possibility, I think it's a very vague possibility, slight possibility, that Howard may have had another child. He was definitely married for a very short time prior to marrying Eva. And my mom has heard a rumor that he had another child, and that child showed up at Howard's funeral in 1920 in a big limousine, maybe from St. Louis, I think she said. That is something that I definitely need to take a look at in terms of DNA to see if there's a possibility that that happened. So far, I have not been able to confirm that at all. But as we look through here, the timeline, we've got over here his residence. That's all based on census records through here. There were sales of farms that even as a young man, Harold was involved in, because remember, his father had died in 1920, so he really took up the man of the house status. This little clip right here where Eva helps Harold Cook arrange grocery store. This is a newspaper article that I need to ask my mom about, because I don't recall seeing anything that Harold Cook actually owned a grocery store, but he must have. This says from Greens Fork, Mrs. Eva Cook Pierce, she had remarried then, of Hagerstown, and Miss Lucille Gentry, who is Pierce's, she was a cousin, or she was a half stepsister. I'm not exactly sure. I've got to go look at that again. I think she was a cousin. Spent Thursday at Richmond helping Harold Cook arrange his grocery store, which he recently bought. So I know Lucille Gentry is definitely a cousin. It is Eva's brother's daughter. But I just find this interesting that my grandfather owned a grocery store. Didn't know that at all. Moving on here, in 1936, he and my grandmother got married. And here's an announcement of the marriage of Connell Cook. It says, the marriage of Miss Gertrude Ann Connell, daughter of John T. Connell of Milton, and Harold S. Cook, son of Mrs. W.G. Pierce of Hagerstown. The ceremony was performed Saturday morning, October 3rd at 8:30 in the rectory of St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church in Cambridge City. Now, the reason why it was in the rectory and not in just the normal church is because my grandfather was not Catholic, and so he was not allowed to get married in the Catholic Church. So I guess they could just do it kind of in the rectory part. I guess that was close enough for my grandmother, a very Catholic grandmother. And then as we look through a couple of other things here, we can go into the gallery. We can see a number of pictures. And I've got a few of my favorites. This one is definitely a favorite. It's around 1906, so he would have been about 3 years old. Just look at him. He's so cute. And then we have several other pictures of him, growing up to be a young man. This was probably about the time that his father died, so I would imagine him being maybe a little less than 16 here, but he's definitely growing into young adulthood here. And then finally, we've got some older pictures. This is how I remember him, with snow white hair and the glasses. That's Harold Cook. And then one last thing that I do want to show you about his life. If we go back here, we can see a death certificate for him. And death certificates have so much information. You got to remember that they are only vital documents for the time and place of death. Everything else needs to be questioned, but it does have a lot of information, and obviously the information is kind of assumed to be true. But here he is, Harold Stats Cook. He died on March 3rd of 1982, born December 25th, 1903. He died in Reed Memorial Hospital as an inpatient in Richmond. He's married. Here's my grandmother. He was a supervisor. There we go. He was a supervisor at an automotive industry. So that's perfect circle right there. And just the sad thing is that you go down here for the immediate cause of death, and that he had lung cancer. And he had a surgery that he did not recover from very well. But he is buried at Greens Fork Cemetery, which is where almost all of the Cooks are buried. So those are the vital records of Harold, and a little bit more information. We got some more information about his role at Perfect Circle.
I have a lot of great memories of my Grandpa Cook, but it's hard for me to believe that I was just 13 years old when he died. So my memories are kind of fading, and so that's why really it's important for me to do what I'm doing with the personal effects of the people that are in my family tree and are in your family tree. So not only is it helping me to preserve the stories, but hopefully it's helping you to learn a little bit more about those people that are no longer with us. I have to say that doing this episode of For the Boys really kind of hit home to me. It may not be as flashy as some of the other ones, if you want to call them flashy, but really being able to hold something like my grandfather's wallet or his watches or these knives, it's so great to be able to feel these things and touch them and smell them and be able to really kind of get a little bit more intimate into their lives. But doing so just brings up more questions. For example, this Perfect Circle company ID card. It says on here that Harold Cook, as an employee of the Perfect Circle company, is entitled to enter and leave premises of all plants. And it's dated December 17th of 1945. It also says that he was 6 feet, weighed 190 pounds, had brown hair and blue eyes. That's amazing to me because I only ever saw him with snow white hair. And I think that he had snow white hair for the vast majority of his life. So even to read something that he had brown hair, I've seen the pictures, I know he did, but I believe that in my mind, it's just got snow white hair. And so it's just another aspect of his life that I don't know. Having these things also brings up the question of what am I going to do with them? These are the kinds of things that aren't really heirlooms, right? These are not things like the Murphy light that can really be passed down. So I really need to think long and hard about what I'm going to do with these things. I don't want to throw them away. Can't really give them away. They're an important part of our history. But guys, you know, this is something that I think a lot of genealogists have to grapple with, is what are they going to do with this stuff, this personal stuff that really doesn't have much meaning to anybody else, but to me, and the ability to tell the stories of who these people are. Having these around is really important. But what do you do with it? So those are the kinds of questions that I'm grappling with. Thank goodness that I've still got my mom and dad around that I can have these conversations with, because you know, these belonged to, you know, to my mom's father, and I want her to have a say in kind of how they are preserved and what to do with them. You know, ultimately, ideally, they would go to you guys, or to, you know, maybe to my cousin's kids. But you know, that's something that I'm trying to tackle this winter, you know, in the summers when I have off, to be able to go through these kinds of bins and to come up with things to do that honor the memory of our ancestors, but at the same time be, you know, kind of pragmatic about it as well. You know, what do we do with this? So those are the kind of questions that I have, and that I would love to be able to talk with you a little bit more about when I see you. Hopefully we'll all be together at Thanksgiving and Christmas. We'll be able to talk with Grandma and Grandpa more about this. But thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. I know some of you know that I'm doing this. Some of you don't know that I'm doing this. But for those who do know, thank you for your support. Might be kind of silly, but I think it's important that I talk straight to you and from my heart, and for the Murphy stories that Dad talks to you straight from his heart, because you know, being this intentional is really important to preserving our family stories. And I want you to know where you come from and who you are. So that's going to do it for today. Starting to get a little bit darker here as the day goes on. Jack is over here sound asleep. I'll put in a picture of him. But I love you guys so much, and I will see you next week on For the Boys.